It's been an absolute crazy week. So I thank you guys for joining us again tonight. And tonight we're going to talk about the war on police because that's what's going on out there. Now, I want to make sure it's very clear right off the bat. I am not defending what happened in Minneapolis. Absolutely not. What happened was wrong, and he's held accountable for it. The verdict is in. It is what it is. Now, are there issues that I have with some of the things going on and some of the things that happened up to the verdict? Absolutely. Do I believe politicians, celebrities, athletes need to shut the hell up and let the process go? Absolutely. But before we get into that, I'm Joe Vollano. So for those of you who don't know me, I see we have some new people, some new friends on the webcast tonight. So thank you for joining us. And as always, if you care to be part of the program, feel free to call in 203-679-9610, or you can email us at straighttalkjv@gmail.com. I always look forward to hearing from you. So, but again, this started well before Mr. Floyd. This war has been going on for years in the making. And the problem with what's going on are the claims that police officers, white police officers, are shooting unarmed black men for no reason. And that's just not the truth. It's never been the truth. But the media keeps pushing this agenda because they're trying to do everything they can to divide. And the problem is, people keep letting them do it. Now, I got into this a little bit on Sunday's show. And I said I wasn't going to do it till today, but I got kind of fired up about it at the end of the last week, Sunday's show. So I gave you guys a little taste of what's coming tonight. We can't let a false narrative lead how we address, one, policing, two, how these communities react to it, and three, our going forward after yesterday. Now, I thank everyone who sent out, again, I got a lot of responses about Sunday's show. I had some questions thrown at us, so I'm going to answer those. And I think one that kind of struck me was an email that came about, how do we justify the numbers? At least that's how I took the question. So Linda, if I'm off base, by all means let me know, because the way I took your question was, okay, well, why are there more white police officers shooting black victims, assailants, whatever the reason is? Why is disappropriated for white versus black? So I had to go grab some stats. First, I'm going to throw your stat up there that you sent me. And this is what you sent me. So she was wondering why there's more white officers going into the neighborhoods that are predominantly black. And you can see it from what's on the screen there. And so I had to go do a little research on it. And I couldn't find exactly where you got this from. But if you look at another stat that I'm going to show you, it's kind of skewed here, but I'll read it to you. So this is police officers in all of America. Okay? So, and to answer your question, which was pretty simple, is 67% of all police officers in America are white. And you got about 12% that are black and so forth. So, to answer your question, I mean, the simple answer without, I don't know how far you want to get deep into this. Obviously, if 62% are white Caucasian, and you only have 12% that are black, but yet in the cities that you're seeing here on your chart, it makes sense that, yeah, when you come to police shootings in a majority black neighborhood, it's going to be more white officers doing it. The numbers. I mean, so if you look at the screen, so you're wondering why there's more white officers doing shootings inside a black neighborhood. The numbers are right there in front of your face. You're going to see it. But here's the thing that I don't know if you noticed from this slide here. Police shootings for black officers on black victims are only 0.015% difference. That's not a lot. That's not a lot at all. And we're going to get into the numbers of how many shootings there are overall and who's being shot and for what reasons. But the statistics would just show you, just on pure facts, that if you have 62% of all police officers being white and only 12%, that's the reason why you're gonna have the disappropriated numbers there. So, just throw me back here. But again, no one is trying to defend what happened. But if you still see what they're pushing out there, whether you talk about Black Lives Matter, you talk about politicians or athletes, they're still saying that all these killings are racially motivated. And that's just the farthest thing from the truth. And I think that's been proven because anyone who's paid attention to this trial, could anyone tell me how many times the prosecutor brought up race? Or how many times the prosecutor said that the police officer was part of a white supremacist group? Zero. 0 times. 0 times was race ever brought up into this case. Do you want to know why? Because there was none there. There was none there. But it doesn't fit the media's narrative. It doesn't fit the media's narrative or these groups' agenda. So they're still out there today saying that George Floyd was murdered, which I don't think he was murdered. It was manslaughter. I don't think any police officer, I don't want to say any, I don't believe that police officer had any intention of going out, seeing George, and killing him. Did he do it? Yes. Is he paying the price for it? Yes. But I have no doubts that he did not intentionally go out there and say, hey, George Floyd, I'm going to murder him tonight. I don't see it. So that's number one. But then we have a shooting, again, in Brooklyn Center, which was a mistake. It was an accident. It was an accident. And I think every media will say, no faster did anything than that officer immediately get charged. Listen, you can't make a mistake like that. You can never make a mistake like that. How do you go from a gun to a taser? I don't know how you could institute. They're two totally separate pieces of equipment. But again, being a police officer is a hard job. Hard job. And mistakes happen. And again, she is paying the price for it. She is going to pay the price for it. And justice will prevail. It's an unfortunate incident. But then we have Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio, everybody jumped all over this officer. And it kills me because people who should know better jumped right on, fell hook, line, and sinker to the media's BS about what happened. NBC doctored video to make it look like she didn't have a knife and she wasn't a threat, when every video shows otherwise. But yet they're going to try to crucify this hero of a police officer. They're going to try to crucify him for saving a woman's life. He saved a life, but he had to take another to do it. It's ridiculous that this is what police officers go again. And the only reason why they jumped on it is because this is what he looked like. That's it. That's it. This is LeBron James that tweeted this. You're next. Are you fucking kidding me? Is that what we're doing here in America? They should be bowing at this man's feet, saying, you are an amazing police officer. He represents the fine men and women who are out there every single day protecting us. This man, in less than 15 seconds, went from out of his car to shooting dead on accurate, by the way, because if he missed that shot, he was going to kill that innocent lady that was about to be stabbed. This man is a freaking hero. I should leave him up here all night because he is a hero who is being disrespected every single time you turn on the news right now. And it's disgusting. This man exemplifies everything that's right with the police departments. Now again, are there bad eggs? Yes. Are there things we could do about it? Yes. The unions could stop protecting them. Police officers within their own ranks need to weed these people out. They do. Police officers need to be able to report these people and get them out because they are... I had no video, no audio there for a second. But this man right here is a hero. An absolute hero. Because he did what needed to be done in a split second to save another person's life. Another black person's life. Because that seems that's all they care about. Now he had to take another black life to do it. Which brings us back to what I talked about 2 weeks ago. Is the culture within the community. White people can't solve that problem. Police officers can't solve that problem. Only they can, within their own communities, solve that problem. But to sit there and try to criticize this man, who is a hero, who exemplifies everything that's great about a police officer, is right there in front of your face. And like I said, I should keep him up here all night. Because he saved lives. Within 15 seconds of showing up, he had to make that choice. And he chose to save a woman's life by taking another. With pinpoint accuracy during all that stress. But liberals will be out there today and in the future saying all this nonsense. Now, there's one in particular that I found quite funny, because liberals' reaction to police taking another one's life is somewhat odd, because I'm going to let you listen to it for yourself, because I found it very funny. Because one, you're going to hear, and I don't usually try to put too much of this stuff up there because it's going to come from a news organization, which is Fox News, of course. You're going to hear a typical liberal, but then you're going to hear the greatest response, and something that I've been saying for years now. I've been saying it for years. Greg's response is dead on accurate, and everybody needs to hear it. So we're going to go ahead and play this real quick. You're going to hear Juan Williams first, and then you're going to hear, in fact, I'll show it to you. I'll put it up on the screen.
That's a butcher shop. All right, so Juan Williams, you're an officer. You get out of the vehicle, you see mayhem. There's a guy that's kicking a girl down to the ground, and another woman lunging at a defenseless woman like this with a sharp blade. You have seconds to react. She doesn't put the knife down when you warn her. What does Officer Juan Williams do to save the lady's life in pink?
Well, I guess I would shoot the gun, not necessarily at somebody, but maybe shoot the gun and maybe, run at the person and try to...
Okay. Now, anyone who knows anything knows that that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You don't shoot your gun in the air. You pull that gun out, you were trained to do one thing, and one thing only. Neutralize the target. That's it. I don't want cops shooting at the leg, shooting at the arm, because if they could do that, then they shouldn't be drawing that weapon to begin with. That weapon is to be drawn only to use deadly force when necessary. I know liberals hate to hear that, but that is the truth. You cannot condone trying to say, we're going to shoot someone in the leg. She has a knife. She is trying to stab people. Taser went out the window immediately. You have one of two choices. One, do what Juan wants and sit there and try to tackle her, which is the dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard. Or two, shoot her. He chose the right one. But he wasn't done with his dumb answer.
Oh, no, I mean...
So wait. You would shoot the gun in the air like a warning shot?
Hopefully to distract or to try to stall or something so I could or my partner could get the knife away, I see is what I was saying. Well, I don't know. I mean, taking someone's life is pretty strong. I don't either. I don't either, Jesse. I mean, Jesse, policing is tough work. But all I'm saying is...
At least someone could finally admit that. Police work is tough. I know liberals don't want to say that. Police work is tough. You have to make split-second decisions that possibly result in taking someone's life. Liberals don't understand that. I don't know why. But we'll get into what they want to do after this.
I think that woman with the knife is a danger to society. It's certainly a danger to the other person, and we want her to stop and be disarmed. I just also think that killing a human is pretty radical. I don't think that's a good thing. But what I see overall here, you asked me what I see. I see people now using this Ohio case, which is messy, as you and I just discussed, to somehow really try to change the subject, from what happened in Minnesota with the Chauvin guilty verdict, with the George Floyd murder on tape, which is right now prompting a lot of eyes to open in America to the idea that really there is a problem with policing, that what black people have been saying about police brutality and abuse and lack of accountability for police who engage in that kind of behavior is a real problem in America. So I think a lot of people just want to change that conversation by looking at this case where it's not clear who's in the right and wrong. All that we know is, with some certainty that deadly force had to be used. And a lot of people are saying, gosh, why do we have to do that every time?
Okay, so a couple different things. One, it doesn't happen all the time. It does not happen all the time. Police officers respond to millions of calls every single year. Every single year, millions of calls. Not hundreds of thousands, millions of calls every year. About 1,000 people die at the hands of police every year. Those numbers, their numbers are phenomenal. They handle things in a proper, professional way. Again, to sit there and say that we have an epidemic of police officers shooting black people in America is false, always has been false, has never been proven. But it's so easy to criticize when you watch it from afar. And again, if that officer didn't take the actions he did, that girl in pink would be dead. And to sit there and say that we are somehow trying to change the subject, no, we're not. We didn't bring up this case. We didn't bring this up. The media brought this up. And they brought it up in a false context. LeBron James, that dumbass, he brought it up. Talking about how we're all racist. But he doesn't mind taking your money, though. He's made billions of dollars off of it. Because he could freaking dribble a basketball. And you think I'm going to listen to him preach? And try to criticize? LeBron James, you go put on a uniform. A real uniform. Take that stupid LA jersey off. Go put on an LA police officer uniform. And go out there. Are you kidding me? We're not trying to change any subject. Everyone admits, there is no disagreement that what happened in Minnesota is wrong. Does anyone know who Tony Timba is? Does anyone know who Tony Timba is? Does anyone know who the hell this man is right here? I bet you don't. Because this man was killed by police in the exact same fashion that George Floyd was. The exact same fashion, except he was mocked after he was laying there dead. He was mocked. And he called police on himself because he didn't take his medicine. He's schizophrenic. And they left his knee on there for 15 minutes. Have you ever heard of him? Have you seen marches in the street? No. No, you didn't. This is probably the first time you're hearing his name. Mob rule has taken over America. Mob rule has taken over America. The more violence and the more you're actually confronting and destroying things, it seems to be the more power you have. And I had this conversation with some of my friends. I told you every week, we text all week long. And I said mob rule is taken over. And people thought I was crazy. Until they finally turned around and said, well, people weren't protesting it, so therefore he did. Listen, justice should not be served based on how many people get into the friggin' streets. Justice should not be served by the amount of people that you get to burn down buildings or attack police officers. Justice is supposed to be blind. But unfortunately, it's not anymore. If you get out into the streets, you're going to get what you want. There should have been no guilty verdict on a murder too. There should have been manslaughter, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Jamie, you missed out on Sunday. We were playing the Geraldo tape where they're trying to tell us again, and this is where I have an issue with civilians trying to do police work. We're trying to tell police how to do their job. Because, again, if you want to talk about police training and police tactics, this guy right here, bang, this guy right here, that guy is everything you try to do with police tactics and training, he exemplifies it. Instead, you got people like Geraldo, who, again, we talked about last week on Sunday. They want to do cross weapon training. You can't wear your gun on the opposite side of you, and that only a liberal would say that. And we explained it on Sunday. Only a liberal would want to cross draw. Because one, it does nothing but put the police officer in danger. And we talked about it. If you go to cross draw and someone pushes your arm, you can't draw that weapon anymore. And if they do tackle you, they have better access to your gun than you do. And if they do pull it out of the holster, it's pointing right at you. Only a liberal would think that that's okay. We have become a culture where we sit there and put these criminals on pedestals. We put these people on pedestals. We put criminals on pedestals. And we demonize the police departments. It's maddening. It's crazy. No doubt, Mike, that there was underlying conditions. And like I said, he called the cops on himself. But again, 15 minutes with a knee on the back. He was dead before they even put him in the ambulance. But again, was justice served for him? No. If you listen to the video, they mocked him. But they were never charged officially. They never went to court. I want my justice system to be blind, the way it's meant to be. Again, do we need some kind of police reform? Yes. I think the unions protect these people. Minnesota, the officer had 19 infractions. Should have never been on the streets. But he was protected by the union every time. We need to solve that problem. Again, the death, unfortunate that it is only a symptom. That's not the root cause of the problems. Just like I talk about in the culture that we're having today. Single parent households. That's an issue. It's proven. Absolutely, it's a huge problem, Jamie. Huge problem. And again, we talked about it with jihad. We said, okay, well, we can't fix Muslims that have jihad into their mosque. Only Muslims from within could fix that problem. in the minority community, there is a culture problem. Do you know how many black men were killed last year by police? 231. 231 were killed by police. Over how many calls? The number is so significantly low, it's insignificant at all. But that's what plays. That's what plays. That's what gets clicks. That's why the media runs with it. Instead of, let's go for the root cause. Why are police officers needing to go out there to begin with? Why are police officers responding to so many 911 calls? But nobody wants to talk about that. So Black Lives Matter, and this is my biggest problem with Black Lives Matter. You don't give a shit about Black lives. You have them being killed. Black on black crime is the biggest problem within the black community. It's not police officers of any color. It's drugs and gangs. And it's another one of those silent, you know, snitches get stitches. That's all nonsense. So Jimmy, you would have loved some of the podcasts from before. They don't care. Again, it's a culture issue, and again, it's across the spectrum. It's not just in when with the respect, because again, why would you have respect? Let's look at it this way. Would you respect an organization that you hear every single time is being demonized? Let's finish. Linda, perfect. Let's finish this clip here, because I'm sorry I cut from it. This is Greg Guffill's response to what Juan just said. And it is, I put it on the roster here because I think it is so perfect of a response. It deserves to be heard. It deserves to be played. So here we go.
This conversation was thrust upon us by really disgusting headlines that made it look like this was a racial execution. And NBC actually got caught deceptively editing the video to make it look like the girl didn't have a knife, and they edited the 911 call. Again, we're back to cleaning up another racially charged story that has been foisted upon us in order to divide us.
The only time the media is interested in looking at the complexities of this stuff is when they are caught out on it, right? No one changed the subject. No one changed the subject. The media embraced this story, and they pushed it to the forefront because they thought it was going a certain way. And then suddenly, when it went another way, people started deleting their tweets, right? But the real and the fact is, Juan says these stories are messy. We've been saying that every time we have 8 or 10 of these a year, we go, each one of these cases is so different, but it's the media that is trying to make them sound exactly the same, and it's not. It is messy. But here's the real outrage. We have lowered our expectations so much that we deem a knife fight as an acceptable part of childhood. If that is true, right, we need to examine these childhoods instead of making disgusting excuses. We saw two narratives collide last night. Police shooting a suspect, which the media obsesses over, black-on-black violence, which the media ignores. But you can't have the former without the latter. Police end up at the end of these people's lives because they were called there due to the violence that the media ignores. Cops end up in situations caused by the problems that are dismissed. So they end up there because it's their job to be there at the end. And no, it's not Juan or me that has to rush in and not make this decision. It's that guy. He can't ignore it. He has to show up and risk everything too. Imagine if we honestly tackled the problems at its roots, the piss poor education, the violence, mental wellness, family structure. What if we examined the variables that end up with the police there at the end of a person's life, rather than dismissing it as a harmless knife fight, or what Jen Psaki said, those are the variables that contribute to this. Because the more you dismiss the variables that lead to this horrible tragedy, the more it keeps coming. This is not about a police officer. This is about everything that led to that moment. And if you deny that, you are propagating this problem. You are part of the problem.
Amen, brother. I could not have said it better myself. I've been trying to say it for years. I have been saying it for years. That is exactly correct. The police don't want to be part of that. The police are forced into it. I honestly could not have said that better myself, which is why I need to make sure that everybody heard it. We don't want to tackle the root causes, so we just ignore it. And again, that's where I say, all right, well, Black Lives Matter, what are you doing about it? You've made hundreds of millions of dollars in donations. Why aren't you in these inner cities trying to help out? They'll rush. And not only Black Lives Matter, all these other groups too. They will rush to the scene of an officer that kills a black man. But they will ignore a 3-year-old girl being friggin' shot dead in Hartford. They will be friggin' silent when young, innocent black kids are being shot while sitting there in their house. And again, Jamie, you're absolutely right. We talked about it last week. We can't fix that problem. No amount of police could fix that problem. It has to come from within. So again, Black Lives Matter, get your asses out there. You know, we heard from state politicians on Sunday talking about how policies are victimizing black citizens. They're the ones that made them. They make it act like they haven't been in control for 30, 40 years. They make it seem like they have no idea this is going on. But these are their communities. They're run by Democrats. They're run with their policies. But yet they're talked there like this is the first time they're hearing about it, and this is the first policy that they're going to make to change. They don't give a shit. They don't. They're just upset because the community's upset. They're upset that the community's upset that a 3-year-old got shot in their house and is now dead because of the violence and the drugs that are plaguing their city with policies of their doing. And they think that the whole change is to throw money at it. If you throw more money at it, the problem's going to go away. Just like our education system, just like anything. War on drugs. Money does not solve it. It is a cultural issue. Only they can fix it. Like I said, can we help? Yes. Yes. I will be the first one to come and help. But you got to be willing to help yourself. If you're not willing to help yourself, how can you expect anyone else? So when Black Lives Matter is turned around and says, well, Black Lives Matter, my question is, which Black lives? Because you seem to sit there and say, all right, well, the criminals' lives matter, but the innocent ones don't. Because you're there for the criminals that have long rap sheets that are now finally, unfortunately, killed by police because you put them in that situation. And you're standing there and you'll spend tons of freaking money trying to freaking get justice that you consider justice for them. But then when an innocent 3-year-old or an innocent 16-year-old or an innocent whatever age, when they're killed, that's all you hear. All you hear is friggin' crickets from them. It's ridiculous. Look at that. I hit the button twice. It's ridiculous. And you want me to take you seriously. I can't take you seriously if you don't want to help yourself. You make the first move and then I will come and join. I will stand by your side. And I will help any way I can. I said it. I will help physically. I will go out there and help you. I will monetarily help you. I will do what it takes. If you're willing to take the first step. But then you got dumbass politicians. Because we went from, one, we need to reform the police. Then we went to, well, we got to defund the police. Now, we're at, screw it. We're abolishing the police departments. And these are the type of things, again, that are so misguided. So misguided. These politicians are so radical. This left is so out there. They are a danger now to the public. They are a danger. They have totally lost their friggin' mind. And Democrats, again, Republicans can't fix these lunatics. Only the Democrats within their own party could fix these people. Listen, Republicans, I will sit there and say it. We have our own crosses to bear. We have people within our party that I don't agree with it, are on the far end. Like I said, some of these religious nuts, no, I'm not down. I look at everything from a common sense perspective. That's what you have to do. Everyone works on emotion. But again, emotion is what gets a reaction out of these people. No matter what side you're on. For Republicans, it's abortion. For Democrats, it's racism. But the problem with that they're having with this whole racism thing is you can't call every single white person a racist because they disagree with you. And that's what they're trying to do. They're saying, hey, if you don't agree with us, you must be racist. No, you're just a fucking idiot. But here's one of the biggest idiots of all. So this is a congresswoman. This is a congresswoman. Talking about the Dante White. It wasn't an accident. Policing in our country is inherently and intentionally racist. How? How? Point out where, just point out where in our law it's inherently intentionally racist. He was met with aggression and violence. He was met with aggression. He was fighting the officer. What do you think's going to happen? She thought she grabbed a taser. Instead, she grabbed her gun. It's a mistake that she will pay the price for. Because at the end of the day, I still don't know how you mix up the two. But she did. And I'm not going to try to put myself in her head. But she knew immediately. When that gun went off, what happened? And no one's disputing it. And this is the best one I love. No more policing, incarceration, or militarization. It can't be reformed. Did anyone happen to see? I couldn't grab it. Did anyone happen to see? Did anyone happen to see the Black Lives Matter tweet about militarization of police departments in black communities? They said that there's more militarization going on in black communities now under Biden than there was under Trump. That's because crime was down. When there's a booming economy, crime goes down. When economies go into recession, crime goes up. It's a fact. It's statistically proven year after year. Oh, there probably definitely is, Jay. Listen, the system's not perfect. System is far from perfect. But are they that big of inequalities? No. No. The stats just aren't there to prove that. And when it comes to violent crime, blacks do it 10 times more than whites do. And when you talk about black on black crime, the numbers go through the friggin' roof. But again, police officers can't fix that. Police officers just have to get there in the end of it. Like I said, do you think a police officer wants to go there? Police officers, I would be the happiest person in the world. Police officers could just sit in their cars all night and do nothing. I'd be like, that's money well spent. It's just crazy. And if you look at the inequities, Jamie, when you talk about those kind of inequities, yeah, if you're talking about drug, yes, absolutely. I will disagree with you. And I will tell you that Brantford is a prime example of that. Brantford is a prime example of why you need an armored vehicle for your SWAT team. We have the issue up here in Meriden. Listen, where you're, depending on where you live, you're going to have a different perspective on it. I've lived in New Haven. I've been down on Exchange Street in Fairhaven many a times. It is not a friendly place, especially if you are a cop going in there. Yeah, Jay, I'll throw it up. Hold on. There it is, 203-679-9610. Feel free to call in. I always are in for a good discussion. I love discussions. It's extremely important that we have discussions. And again, we can agree to disagree. That is good. That is good dialogue. Because it's very important. But yes, there are communities that do need these vehicles. Like I said, Brantford was a prime example of what happened. Those police came under heavy fire right off the bat. Here we go. We got our caller. Here we go. Jamie, can you hear me? Oh. Do I got you, Jim? No, hold on. Oh. There you are.
To send a voicemail,
Do I
press
got you
2.
now? Are you there? Ah, and just like that, I lost. Okay, hold on a second. I am going to call him back. Or whoever was calling this. Here we go. There we go. Do we got you now?
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Jimmy. How are you, sir?
Hey, buddy. This is fantastic. Thanks so much for doing this. I knew I liked you from the first time I met you.
For anyone who doesn't know, Jamie is one of my boating customers and also one of our heating oil customers. That's right. He comes from the nice part of Connecticut. So, Jamie, all right, so go ahead. Bring it on. I want to know why you don't think the police need to have a SWAT vehicle, an armored vehicle.
Well, so it's not that I implicitly think that there's not a need for SWAT teams, especially to your point, perhaps in Brantford, perhaps in New Haven, Hartford, where you have large-scale organized criminal enterprises where people are organized with guns and are, posing serious threats to public safety. I'm not saying that, but my example is Coventry, Connecticut. Coventry, Connecticut is a rural, quiet, sleepy town. They have a freaking tank. And the reason they have this tank, from what I understand, is that there is a program out there where these police stations can buy surplus military equipment from the government when it's ready to be decommissioned. And I'm not saying all of them shouldn't, but I just don't think personally that a little sleepy town like Coventry, Connecticut should have or should really feel like they credibly need that. Can they purchase it because they have the money, because the tax rates there probably allow them to? I guess that's my point. The point is about this militarization idea. So yeah. I'll rest there.
Yeah, so 2 points to that. One, he's talking about, this is a program that started under Bush, and it was taken out of commission under Obama, and then Trump brought it back because, again, they're expensive vehicles. And some cities and some towns do use them. Now, I don't know the circumstances of a Coventry, but I will say there are also regionals. So, like for Meriden has we had one. It's broken now. We're looking to get another one. But there is a regional one in North Haven, and that covers Branford to Meriden. So if there's a big incident like Branford, there's a regional SWAT team that will go to that vehicle, and then they will bring that in. I don't know about Coventry. I don't know if that is part of a regional SWAT team or not, but
could very well be.
Yeah, but I see your point why you would look at a town like that and be like, well, why do you need that? I say this. If you're able to have one, it's just like a firearm on a good person. It's better to have and not need than need and not have. So, no matter how small or big the community is, I don't see the problem with it as long as you're not using it all the time on basic stuff. It should be used strictly on, let's say someone with a rifle. And plus, you got a lot of guns up there in Coventry. So, I mean, again, I don't know the circumstances of it, so I'm not going to totally speak to it. But I do understand if they can't, again, if they could afford one, I'd rather have one than not have one, especially when they're so cheap.
I hear you, and I listen. I think that I'm a huge supporter of law enforcement. For anybody to Monday morning quarterback the decisions that get made in the split-second heat of the moment, it's really problematic to doing that, because at the end of the day, these are people that have families, and as I've spoken to multiple police officers, the phrase or the term, what they say to me is they just want to go home, right? Like at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, they want to go home. They want to go home to their families. And, if somebody is putting them, is endangering people or endangering them, well, push comes to shove, they're going to pull the trigger. And it's not for me to necessarily question that. I will say this, though. There is a culture within the police force or within police. Their training does include escalation in a fashion to stamp out any kind of.
In my headphones
can you hear me?
Anymore. Oh, hold on one second. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I don't know if where I lost you.
I was talking about the culture, the training of police tactics. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
And I was saying that from my perspective, it seems to me, and what I know is that the culture and the training of police tactics is they escalate to basically infinity. They're trained to do this in order to stamp out any kind of escalation from those that they are engaging with. It's a tactic to instantly sort of nullify any sort of threat or challenge to them. I do think that has led to some of these issues, because rather than, maybe taking a measured or thoughtful escalation technique. What they're doing is they're basically going to, infinity, when maybe going to 10,000 first would be the first, would be a better first step.
Yeah, listen, and I think the rhetoric that's being thrown out there against police officers is one of the main causes why that's happening. Because, again, once something happens, you have a crowd. And Minnesota was no different. Listen, do I believe that he intentionally meant to kill Floyd? No. But if you watch the video, he's not even paying attention to Floyd half the time. He's trying to find out. He's trying to keep an eye on the crowd. Now, again, I'm not going to let them use that as an excuse, but I understand it. And
but he was also, I think we all can agree that he did cross a line.
Absolutely.
Whether you're a supporter of a police officer, I can tell you absolutely are. I certainly am. But to your points earlier, listen, there are bad eggs.
Absolutely.
There needs to be accountability within, the blue force. Yes. To be able to speak out against these people, and it shouldn't be like, okay, well, listen, we'll pull them aside afterwards. It should be, this is not acceptable, and it should be public, and it should be swift and strong.
Listen, after 19 infractions, he should have not been on the street.
Yeah.
Not been on the street. But again, and again, we can sit there and talk about reform, and I think that's something where the unions have to step up and say, again, and that can only happen from within the police department. The police officers themselves have to say enough is enough. They all know who they are.
Yeah.
We have that problem here in Meriden. I've gone against our police chief many a times with the excessive force issues that we had here. And with our new police chief, he's cleaned a lot of it up. So, there are issues within the police department that can be solved. But again, just like in the minority communities, has to be done with it.
Yeah, so I also wanted to talk about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
By no means, I don't want to capitalize your show. I'm sure you have things that you want to talk about.
Go ahead.
So I am friends with an African American who is a solid, upstanding person that went to college and comes from a strong family background. He went to a major university and played football. This is a person who is intimidating just kind of seeing them, right? Like, this is a big, strong individual.
Yeah.
And we worked together. One time, he was going to the airport. He was going to be, flying out of Bradley. And when he got there, he got booted from his flight. Or he was basically told it was oversold, and he was going to have to. So the airline They didn't give him another flight. They actually told him that he was going to have to drive to Boston that day from Bradley to get a flight to go where he needed to go. And he's telling me this story, and I'm like, are you serious? Because I would have raised hell. I would have been like, this is completely unacceptable. Absolutely not. I would have made a huge stink. And he looks at me, he goes, Jamie, if I raise a huge stink in an airport as a black African American, like as a black guy, do you know what will happen to me? And that has always stuck with me because I know exactly what would happen to him. He would have probably been detained. People would have been like, sir, calm down, sir, calm down. Security would have been called. I mean, that's a real reality for somebody of color. It's always struck me because it was like I had a default reaction to how I would respond. And I'm not a person that shies away from confrontation whatsoever. I would not have been treated the same way.
Okay, so real quick. So I have two things that strike me in that conversation. One, where does he get that interpretation that that's what's going to happen if he makes a stink? And first, there's a difference between making a stink and being respectful. I got to imagine if you're respectful about it, you're going to get the same reaction no matter what color you are, no matter what your ethnicity, what race you are, what gender you are. So my first question, just listening to that, would be like, where has that been implanted in his head? That's what's going to happen if he says something.
Well, that's a good point. And listen, at the end of the day, we don't know because he didn't say something.
Correct.
But the the point is that and where does it come from? I mean, I got to imagine that it comes from his experience, right? I mean,
well, I don't know, because let's look at it this way, Jamie, and then let's put this back to, we're talking about, young black men being afraid of being shot by police. It's a false narrative. It's been implanted in their head over the years because that's what people keep telling them, that if you do this, this is what's going to happen. When that's not the truth at all. You are more likely to get killed by another black man than by a cop of any color. And
that's for sure. We can definitely agree on that.
And that's the same thing. So, again, I don't know the gentleman, so I just want to know, where did he get that thought? Because I don't think that is what would have happened if he turned around and said, listen, I have to get here. Is there another airline that I could take that you guys could just give me my money back? Whatever. I mean, there's so many different things. I'm sad for him that is what he has to think about. And I'm just worried about where he gets that from. Was it from experience, or just like, most black gentlemen who are told about the warnings of police, which are so unfounded. There is no stat or fact to prove it. And again, I think that's what we have to break. And I think, again, that can only come within the community, because every statistic, you can throw every statistic at anyone who says that black people are getting gunned down like crazy by officers, which is false. The more you say that, it just doesn't compute with them.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and it's almost it's not necessarily for us necessarily to judge it, right? Because I know that I can put up a big stink, and I do.
Join the group.
I have. I'm a pretty strong-willed person. If my buddy tells me, dude, I could never do that because of this, and this is, by the way, this was like 5 years ago, this anecdote I just shared. This is beyond, the present discourse that's taking place.
Oh, this has been going on for years.
What's that?
This has been going on for many, many years.
Well, yeah, that's definitely true. But, I don't know if we have any African American folks out there who, could share their perspective. But it's hard, I think it is hard to put yourself in their shoes. I think we invalidate our validity in our arguments if we don't at least try to see the perspective there. And I think this is actually a really good anecdote. I hear you. We don't know that definitely would have happened. No. But if somebody who's a buddy of mine says, this would not have been handled the same way if I, as a black person, handled it the way you're telling me that I should. So, I don't know. Food for thought.
I hear you.
You're right. This narrative is very dangerous. This idea that we don't respect police because they're just out there to get us. This embracing of being a victim is very problematic.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And like I said, I would never try to marginalize his feelings, because obviously he has them. So they're justifiable to him. And that's all that really matters. I'm just more concerned on why he has those feelings. What are the root cause of those feelings? And that's what I would love to know, because I like to know if it, again, was it personal experience, or was it just, how it was embedded in his brain over decades.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I've heard stories about, African American women having conversations and African American fathers having conversations with their sons about how they need to conduct themselves. But those are the good ones, right? Those are the ones that are actually parenting their kids. What the message is, hopefully, is not that police officers are evil and they're out to get you. Hopefully, it's the same message I'm assuming that you got, right? Which is, hey, these are people that you need to respect.
Respect and obey.
when a police officer pulls you over, you put your hands at 10 and 2. You say, yes, sir. You don't move. You don't make any erratic motions. If they come to your house, you're polite. You're respectful. You let them do what they're supposed to do. Hopefully that's the message.
That's exactly it.
Right?
They have a job to do. You can fight it in court. That's what our justice system is for. And we're gonna and I'm gonna have a clip coming up about exactly that, what the judge in that case had to say about outside influences.
Right.
Because again, people are so quick to react.
Insane. That was just completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's what scares me about that case, by the way, Derek Chauvin, is that, I mean, he was basically given a mistrial because of Maxine Waters' reckless commentary.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
and the judge even said,
what's going to happen as a result of that is that this isn't going away. This is not sealed. This is not shut. This is going to labor on for God knows how long. And every single time there's any kind of new development, it's just going to continue to flare up.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There will be no healing.
Well, they don't want it to heal. There's certain individuals and certain organizations that don't want the healing because the healing's doesn't mean they don't make money.
Well, what do you think the motivation for this is?
Follow the money.
What's the rationale?
Follow the money. Black Lives Matter made over $200 million in donations. Show me that. Just anytime you have an issue, my first reaction is follow the money.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter makes it. Jesse Jackson was just in Brooklyn Center. Follow the money. Listen, there's people that are professional race baiters, and they play off of it.
Yeah,
they don't want this to end.
Influence. Yep.
The media editing videos. Why are you editing videos? Just play the video. Let it speak for itself. But no, it doesn't fit their agenda.
Oh yeah, I mean the mainstream media is in shambles. I mean there is no journalistic integrity in media today, and that's why I really don't consume it.
No,
with the exception of Fox News, which I have my issues with that sometimes too, because I don't want to hear a biased view. Yeah, I want to hear the facts, and I'll make my own decision. But we have a lot of sheep in our country.
We do.
On both sides. But
again, they're sheep for reasons. And again, if you were here for previous things, listen, it's all about control. All this is about control. No matter what you're talking about, it's money and control. If you control the population, you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
So, but again, right. that's for more conversation.
I just wanted to offer some of those thoughts. I know you got a show to do, so by all means.
Jamie, I thank you for calling in. Nice to talk to you.
Yep. Take
and
care.
I'll see you. Thanks.
Bye.
So again, how often listen? I talk about race all the time because listen, it's an uncomfortable, and you know why I do it? Because it's uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to talk about for some people. But listen, if you're not willing to have the conversation, how do you fix it? If you're not willing to address it in an honest way, how can you fix it? You can't. You can't fix it by ignoring it. So, it's just one of those things that you just really have to have a conversation. So he brought up, let's first of all, I want to play Maxine Waters' comments because this is what really got people flared up. This was 2 days before the verdict was read. So, here we go.
Very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that is say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away.
And not just manslaughter, right? I mean.
Oh no, not manslaughter. No. This is guilty for murder. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree.
Congresswoman, what happens if we do not get what you just told? What should the people do? What should protesters on the street do?
I didn't hear you.
What happens?
What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
Get more confrontational. This is coming from the same woman who said that you have to get in the faces of Trump supporters and the cabinet of the president and all of his allies and get in their face. But yeah, she's the first one to criticize Donald Trump for what she says, the insurrection on January 6th. But yeah, those comments were 10 times worse than anything that Trump's ever said. But they just gloss over it. They don't care. If you see, you got everyone in the media sitting there trying to give cover for her. It's ridiculous. But again, so me and Jamie were just talking about, this is from the George Floyd trial, and this is what the judge had to say about politicians and athletes and everyone in between getting involved in the judicial system.
I'm aware that Congressman Waters was talking specifically about this trial and about the unacceptability of anything less than a murder conviction, and talk about being confrontational, but you can submit the press articles about that. This goes back to what I've been saying from the beginning. I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function. I think if they want to give their opinions, they should do so in a respectful and in a manner that is consistent with their oath to the Constitution, to respect a co-equal branch of government. Their failure to do so, I think, is abhorrent, but I don't think it has prejudiced us with additional material that would prejudice this jury. They have been told not to watch the news. I trust they are following those instructions, and that there is not in any way a prejudice to the defendant beyond the articles that we're talking specifically about the facts of this case. A congresswoman's opinion really doesn't matter a whole lot. Anyway, so motion for mistrial is denied.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down.
So, I mean, even he's the first to admit. There's going to be, that's perfect grounds for an appeal. Why? What was the purpose of her going out there? There was no purpose for her being there. She went there with the intent to intimidate the jurors. That's it. That's the only reason why she went out there. It's absolutely crazy. But again, you have the media and you have Democrats throwing cover for her. They're throwing shade for her. No, she did nothing wrong. Oh, here we go. We got another call. Who we got? And we have, who's this with us tonight?
To accept, press 1. To send a voice
Ah, there we go. Who is joining us tonight? Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you, yes.
There you go. Who's this?
Hi. Okay, this is Linda.
Hi,
How are
Linda.
you? Hi, I'm looking at your video. I see there's a delay or something, but
A little bit.
I can hear you.
Go ahead.
This is Linda.
Go ahead, Linda.
Hi, how are you? It seems like there's a delay, but I wanted to just kind of call in to discuss, what
Okay,
I'm most familiar with.
Why don't you
which
shut your
is,
volume off? Shut your volume off on
originally I'm
your...
from Staten Island, New York. I've been in Connecticut about 14 years. And I wanted to say that there's a definite difference in the demeanor of police officers. Oh, yeah, let me do that. Okay, all right, is that better?
There you go.
Okay, all right, yeah. And so I've been in Connecticut about 14 years. I was born and raised in Staten Island, New York. I want to say that there's a definitive difference, a noticeable difference between the demeanor of the officers in Connecticut. I mean, I am a white person, and those in Staten Island. I can only speak to that. I've been here long enough to have a historical knowledge. I've been pulled over by the police for missing a stop sign, things like that. The demeanor here is much more gracious. I'd almost call it almost a Boy Scout kind of demeanor here, as far as I've experienced it. I do hear from minorities that they don't encounter it that way, even in Connecticut. And in Staten Island, I would have to say it's particularly severe. And the racism that the officers carry with them, particularly severe. I can only speak to what I've known.
Hold on a second. You just said the racism that they carry. How do you know the police carry racism?
Oh, because I've seen
How?
it. I can only speak to my own experiences. I've seen the difference. In Staten Island, New York, for an example, it's in the entire system. As an example, I lived with a black person. They had some sort of medical issue. The police came. They saw him laying on the floor, literally laying on the floor. There's no question that they didn't see him. And they looked at me and they looked around and said, well, what's the problem? What's the problem here? And obviously I said, well, this person is on the ground. They need medical attention. And so that's the kind of racism that you can encounter frequently in Staten Island. And I've seen that. I've seen it in my own home. I've seen it in other situations. I do see that there's a difference in Connecticut and that it seems to be better policing here. I don't know, I don't know what I can attribute that to. But then I also wanted to mention I only want to speak from what I have a historical knowledge of. Mm-hmm. And when you look at something like the Eric Garner case, even though that was some years ago now, Eric Garner was just basically a nuisance. And the day that he was killed by an officer or officers, he wasn't even selling cigarettes. I mean, he was just a petty criminal, a nuisance, and known in the community just as really not more than a nuisance, What people don't realize when they hear about that case is that area is and has been historically for decades rife with heroin addicts. Yeah. What are the forces? What is the system that decided to target him, basically a nuisance? Where Tompkinsville, that was the area, there's a small park there. The park is unlivable and has been for many years, 30 years, 40 years. It's a small transportation hub, and they allow it to go on and on and on as a bastion for heroin addicts. And that was the man that they decided to go after, for tax revenue. I don't know all the reasons, but it seems suspect to me. I feel like it's a profit-driven motive. It's tax-driven.
But I don't see the Gardner case as a racial issue. That's more of a policing issue on whether or not they were trying to go after petty criminals. They repeatedly told him to stop it, and it wasn't his first time with the law. So, but again, it wasn't a racial issue. They didn't go after him because he was black. He was committing a crime, how trivial it might seem to us or to anyone else. To New York, that's tax revenue. You're right, it is profit-driven. But I don't want it to come off as if that was some kind of racial issue that was going on, because we were talking about racism. And again, I don't know the whole circumstances with the last one you talked about, with your roommate or whoever he was. But to the Gardner, that wasn't race. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page there. I don't want, again.
I'm not even saying, and I haven't said it was entirely racially motivated, but there is that system that happens there.
What system? I think we're having a miscommunication. I think we're having a miscommunication because I think you're trying to project a false narrative that's been debunked many, many times through stats and figures. So we were talking about racial, and you were talking about that the police department's more racist there than here. But you gave me one example of that. Okay, I could see where you're coming from. I don't know the circumstances, but then you brought me Gardner, which absolutely had nothing to do with race. So I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
I didn't say it had to do with race. I think it was, these things don't have to be stated overtly.
What does it have to be stated overtly?
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be stated overtly. I mean, there are things that occur that can be understood. I can only say that, it's not just a matter of race. I mean, no one ever brings up the issue of being impoverished and how that relates to policing and how the police relate to an impoverished community.
I think I just brought that up. I brought that up just earlier. Listen, every stat and every figure and every statistic shows that with a booming economy, crime goes down. When you have an impoverished community and you have recession, crime goes up. Meriden, prime example of this. Meriden redid the whole downtown. And instead of trying to bring in mix, like market rate apartments, they brought in public housing. And the police department came in and said, listen, if you do that, crime's going to go up. It's statistically proven. You bring in low income, crime goes up to that area. It just is what it is. Those stats don't lie. It's been consistent for decades. But it's nothing racial. It doesn't matter whether you're white, Hispanic, or black. If you're impoverished and you go to a certain area, it's going to go up. So, I understand people have their own personal views of things, but I don't look at things emotionally. I look at things through facts because that's all I care about. This is straight talk. I like facts. So, again, which is why I see you're trying to go back to, you're saying now it's inadvertently racist, the Gardner situation. I see you're trying to bring it back in. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
It's not overt. It's something that is in our history. I mean, you can't deny that it's in our history.
It's not an epidemic in our history. As far as policing being racist, and I'm not talking about 1930s, 40s, 50s, not even 60s. I'm saying, all right, let's talk about this millennia. Racism in our police department is not a huge issue. There is no statistic that you could show me that shows otherwise. Because there's none.
Right. Well, to get hold of such a stat, you would have to actually be... someone would actually have to go and live and study of the black communities and actually compile information from that point of view.
So, Linda, every time a police officer makes contact with anyone, do you know how many forms they have to fill out? From the U.S. Department of Justice, there is at least 8. That to go over every demographic, age, race, everything. Everything is tracked now. There are cops that don't even make traffic stops because they don't want to do the paperwork. It's ridiculous. They spend more time doing paperwork than they do anything else.
But is there any oversight of this paperwork? I mean, is there any organization of the data?
Yeah, it all goes down to Washington, D.C. FBI takes care of everything.
Right, but how do we know, how well this is being maintained? Who's studying the data?
Well, the Justice Department studies it.
I could say I looked at something.
Well, the FBI studies it, and if they have any issues, trust me, they do auditing all the time. I mean, Meriden, prime example. We've had the FBI here many times. So, again, but to go back to, I guess, my main point is that I see you're apprehensive about the police department and whether or not they're trying to hide something. 99.9% of police officers are good. They do their job the way it's supposed to be done. They care about the communities they serve and those within it. You're going to have the people that you know have issues. And those are the ones the police department within itself have to get rid of. But I think from your experiences, I guess, in Staten Island, you didn't have a favorable view of the police department. Now, are things different in New York than they are here in Connecticut? Absolutely. But again, if you go to New Haven, you go to Hartford, you go to Bridgeport, I mean, you might think they're even worse than Staten Island because they have a much harder job. Listen, like Jamie said, they just want to go home. I don't think they wake up in the morning saying, I'm racist, I just want to go get some minorities. It's just not happening.
It's not an overt conscious thought in that manner.
So you're talking about unintentional bias?
Yes, so there's an implicit bias, there's an intentional bias.
So hold on a second.
You can't deny that exists.
Hold on a second. So I just want to make sure I get this straight. So you're saying that they're prejudiced on thoughts that they don't even know they're having, right? So how are they supposed to fix that?
In some way.
So how did they fix that?
In some way.
So how did they fix that?
Well, more oversight would be the
No, oversight's not going to fix that.
Oversight.
Oversight doesn't fix that. You're saying that they have a ghost within a ghost in their head. They don't even know they're having the thought. So how can they sit there and fix it?
Well, that's true. But I mean, it's something that has to be looked at. It's something that has to be understood.
How do you do that? They don't even know they're having the thought, Linda. So
well, Derek Chauvin, right? Didn't he have 19 incidents?
19 incidents had nothing to do with race. Had nothing to do with race. He was just a bad cop. He did things wrong. He was excessive force. He did nothing with race. That prosecutor could have brought up race 1,000 times if he wanted. The prosecutor never, ever, ever in that whole trial brought up race. There was never any evidence of it. The only ones bringing up race in that trial is the media and the organizations outside. Race never, ever came into play in that trial because it wasn't there. But they're going to try to make you believe that this was a racist cop who had nothing better else to do with his time than sit there and hunt down a black man and sit on his neck for 9 minutes. And somehow I think you believe that because I think you think that he had thoughts in his head that he didn't even know about because that's what that bias is.
Well, we all have a historical knowledge, and you can't just dismiss the kind of racism that has existed.
That you don't know you're having?
For years.
That you don't know you're having, so you're trying to say it's inbred in your being?
It's a conscious thought, but there is a history here.
No.
There's a history
you are going down
a history of civil rights. You
are going down a very, very slippery slope, and you should be very careful with stuff like that because so what you're telling me is that no matter what, you have thoughts in your head that you don't know you're having that you're projecting out on other people.
Everyone does, and it's particularly pervasive.
How do you fix it?
Law enforcement.
How do you think you fix that? So you think that a majority of police officers are racist, they just don't know it?
What, they know it? They can deny it?
They can't know it because,
know it?
wait a minute, they can't know it because they don't even know they're having the thought.
They both know and they don't. They both know it and they don't.
That is
everyone has some racism.
That is a huge leap you were trying to make. And that's a very dangerous one.
Right. It's in our history.
No, it's not.
It's in our history.
No, it's not.
Slavery isn't in our history. Civil
okay.
In our history.
Okay, hold on a second. So are you trying to tell me that when white slaves were in Africa, that now black people now have a bias against whites before they even got here? Or even today? If you go to South Africa today.
They very well could, but this is something that lives in generations upon generations up until the present time.
No. I think, Pat, you were absolutely right. She's confusing racism with implicit bias. No. You can't sit there and say that you can control something that you don't even know. It's a ghost of a ghost. It's not even a thought you know you're having.
Well, that's the difficulty of it. There is racism. And
what difficulty is there? You don't know you're having it.
It exists on both the subconscious and a conscious level, and
No.
that's what no one addresses.
No, you can't address it. You don't know you're having it. You can't address it.
Right.
You can't.
But it's in our history.
No, it's not in our history. No, it's not. If that was the case, you would have all-out war going on in the world. Now, you know, Sean, this is why we have these conversations. This is why we have these conversations. It's very good to have these conversations because it just shows you the different perspectives people have, and it's extremely important. It's extremely important.
If I ask someone if they're a racist,
yes,
of course they're going to say no, but they haven't even been confronted yet with all the situations that will make it clear that they do have some racism.
I could ask you Linda, I could ask you 1,000 questions. Linda, I could ask you 1,000 questions right now that will make you into a racist. I could ask you 1,000 questions. You can sit there and say you're not racist. I could ask you 1,000 questions, and one of them you're going to go, oh, you're going to give the wrong answer, and I'm going to be like, there you are. In your head.
I'm not a police officer. I don't carry a weapon.
It doesn't matter.
I'm not going to act out on that.
It doesn't matter. Neither are they. Neither are they. They don't know they're having the thought. Linda, I mean, we could go around in circles on this, but
well, you picked up. Everyone has a subconscious and a conscious mind. So they do speak in a racist way. I have seen that many times.
Well, then that's not implicit bias. That's just racism. There's two totally different things. You're confusing the two.
They have both. I'm not confusing anything. They have both. You can't deny that we have a history of civil rights issues that had to be just vibrantly fought for, vigilantly fought for.
Yeah.
I mean, just your basic rights.
Okay. And that has been solved, right? Again, if we had that big of an issue, you'd be seeing race wars in the street on a daily basis.
Well, you will. You will.
Oh, we will if you keep this stuff up. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because you're trying to tell me that it doesn't matter what you think because we had racism in the past that it doesn't freaking matter. You're a racist. No, you are what you were brought up. Every generation is brought up a different way. And if you're going to tell me,
it feeds into the situation that we have today.
No, what feeds into the situation we have today is people saying that everything is racial, and it's not. The problem we're having today is that people are going, and you included, or have a false narrative that you're trying to push that has no bearing of fact behind it. None. I mean, we could go on here and do this all day long, but sweetheart, I thank you for calling in, and I look forward to more of your emails. But on here, we're going to agree to disagree. You want me to agree with you that people are racist based on thoughts they don't even know they're having, and that is a hard leap for me to do.
I don't want anyone to agree with me. Those are my particular
It's okay,
beliefs.
and I respect you for them, and I love you for them.
Okay.
All right, Linda. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're up against. You know, for the good or bad. For the good or bad. People have these thoughts implanted in their head. Whether it's Jamie with that gentleman, who I would love to get into deeper in that. I would love to. I want to know why they feel that way. Is it from personal experience? Is it from just something that's implanted in their heads over decades? Just, constantly put in there. Linda had a bad experience, but now she wants to bring race into everything. And I mean, I'm sorry, I can't buy it. And then to tell me that people are racist when they don't even know it, they're having thoughts and within a thought. It's a ghost of a thought. It's a ghost of a ghost. You don't even know you're having it. You can't fix it. But that's the thing. All right, guys, we're well over. I knew this one was going to take a lot longer tonight. So I scheduled my time, and oh, Pat, you used to teach it? There it is. 203-679-9610. By all means, Pat, always a good talking to you. Pat is a former police officer and a fine gentleman at that. I just put it up, 203-679-9610. Feel free to give us a call. I'm going to need aspirin before we're all said and done here, Sean. But again, this is why we do the show. Oh, here's Pat. What's going on, Pat? How are you, Pat?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Excellent. I didn't know you were doing a podcast. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoy it. And we're going to get a police officer's perspective here.
Yeah, I used to teach implicit bias, and they developed a training program about implicit bias. And one of the takeaways that I got from it most of all is how quick we assess somebody based on their exterior appearance. And it's not their skin color. It is their clothes. It's the clothes that they're wearing and how they conduct themselves more than skin color, ethnicity, and things like that. So I used to do a presentation at the PD and talk to people how someone could really trick you. If you wanted to rob a bank, you went in there with a mask and a hood, and a mask is not a good example in these days, this day and age, but a mask and a hood, and you robbed the bank, and they call the police. The police are looking for what they think in their mind are robbing. You're thinking of, guy with a mask and a hoodie running with a bag of cash.
Yep.
Go in and rob a bank in a three-piece suit with a business, with a briefcase, and you'll walk right past the cops, walk right out the door right after robbing the bank, because they're not looking for the guy in the suit, no matter what your race or ethnicity is. So, and one of the things about implicit bias training is we teach people to raise their awareness. You can't judge a book by its cover. Some of the most dangerous people in the world look totally harmless. They look like they're a little old lady, for example. And I don't know if you've ever seen down in Colombia, I forgot her real name, but they called her the godmother. She's the one who kind of patented that drive-by assassination on the motorcycles in Colombia, part of the drug cartel. She looked like a grandmother. She was a ruthless killer who ordered hundreds of people killed. But if you looked at her, you'd think she's harmless. Look at her. She's a little old lady. So that's kind of what we used to teach the officers about the implicit bias. To be aware of that. Just because someone's, in today's day and age, the kids are wearing clothing that's popular. Well, some of it's red, so that doesn't necessarily make them a blood. But that is a red shirt and red hat and red shoes is like a gang symbolism for a blood, but it's also popular culture for all the kids to wear. So the officers just need to be mindful of that. And you were right when you said that the cops do not go out there and make let's go get the black people, let's get the Hispanics, things of that nature. That doesn't happen. There are officers have implicit bias just like everybody does. And the awareness of it is to try and make them more, the training, is to try to make them more aware of it so that they don't allow their implicit bias to control their decision-making and jump to conclusion, make assessments that aren't true,
But
I don't know
Pat,
if you saw that, the text that I posted about for 20-plus years we've been watching the 9/11, the Taliban, the ISIS, and part of my slideshow, I used to put a picture of a guy named Mohammed Vollano. Have you ever heard of him before?
I have not.
He's wearing a turban and a traditional, it's like a kind of a gown that people in the Middle East and Afghanistan wear. And I wouldn't tell the officers what the guy, who he was or what he did. I would show the picture of him quick, and then ask the officers, what does he do for a job? And I, had citizens participate in this as well. Almost everybody says he's a terrorist, he's a bomber, he's ISIS. He saved Marcus Luttrell. Remember the movie Lone Survivor?
Yeah.
Did you hear the movie Lone Survivor?
I have.
That's the person. He's a shepherd. He's a farmer. He's the one who saved Marcus Luttrell from being killed. The only SEAL member that survived the attack by the Taliban.
I saw the movie.
Because we're kind of programmed, because of the media does a lot of this programming. You know, when you watch TV, the media funnels a lot of information into your subconscious, so you just have to be mindful of it.
So Pat, what's your take on everything that's been going on? For decades, we haven't talked in a while. So,
yes.
From your perspective, the funding of the police, now it's abolished the police. What are the officers feeling now? Because if I was an officer, and listen, I know most of them. What are they thinking at this point? Look at the state of Connecticut. They try to go after the immunity. What is really going on here on the police officers' minds?
Well, I think a lot of the officers. This is it's very discouraging, especially since. A lot of the way that officers respond and react to things is the way they're trained. That's the training. So even the Chauvin case that was George Floyd, we received training in Meriden and across the country, and it was called the swarm technique. And this is to deal with people who are going into the excited delirium. Now, I didn't particularly see signs of that from George Floyd. I'm no expert on it by any stretch of the imagination, but you've probably heard of these people before. They use PCP, or sometimes it's cocaine and other drugs, and quite often they strip off their clothes for no apparent reason in the middle of January. They're running around naked and just acting totally bizarre. And so the swarm technique was designed to try and contain them, because it is an emergency situation. And you hold them down, and basically the way it was trained here is you call for EMS right away. They're supposed to sedate the person, and that's supposed to get them out of this manic kind of state, which is largely fueled by drugs. Sometimes there's mental illness involved in it as well, but it could be life-threatening. And it looked to me like that's what they were trying to do. Maybe they assessed him and thought that he was maybe on something. But they just kept him down there for too long. You've got to check on the guy. You've got to maintain dialogue with him. You should be reassuring him, talking to him, and checking on him. Make sure that he's doing okay. And if you can not kneel on him, if you don't have to, like if you're not thrashing around, you don't do it. You can let off the pressure. You're still going to hold on to him with your hands. We'll be ready to subdue him if he tries to fight and go crazy. But there's really no reason to put any pressure on the guy while he's already somewhat subdued. And it's hard to say by just watching the video. I did see some of the other body cam videos as well. And they were holding them. They were trying to do what the swarm technique teaches officers to do: hold the arms and the legs, the upper body, and control the shoulder blades. That's where the knee is supposed to be placed. And typically, one knee is on the shoulder, the other one's either on the ground, or they have their foot on the ground. And you're just trying to hold the person there. And EMS is supposed to come rapidly. As you may know, EMS got sent. I don't know how it happened, but it got sent to the wrong address. So there was a lengthy delay because of an error in dispatch where they sent the EMS to the wrong address, so they didn't get there very quickly.
Yeah. So also, it wasn't a stable environment, which is also why they couldn't get in there. But yeah. Since I have you, since you have the expertise. Are you afraid that police officers, with the environment that's out there against them, are going to start backing off because they don't?
Yeah, that's a very real possibility, and especially, unfortunately, our education system has dropped the ball nationally, not locally necessarily, but the national education system has dropped the ball, and the YouTube videos and the social media stuff has fueled all this resistance to the police. So, for example, if an officer sees you doing something, whether you think you did anything wrong or not, it doesn't matter. If the officer has reasonable suspicion that you're committing crime, that's all that matters. That's really all that matters. Unless there's a judge right there, The officer's got to have reasonable suspicion. He has the right to stop you and order you to stop, and you have to stop. A lot of people think that I didn't do anything wrong, so I don't have to stop. And this is where a lot of these confrontations come from. Same as the traffic stop. I don't have to show you my license. Why did you stop me? The officer's not required to tell you why he stopped you. He just has to have a valid reason. In fact, there's case law on it. He can lie about the reason that he stopped you. I'll give you an example. We're looking for a murder suspect. I think he's the passenger in that car. Pull that car over. The real reason you're pulling it over is because we want to identify that murder suspect. But because they didn't have a tail light, we pulled them over for the tail light. Now, you can lie to people like that. You can use a ruse to identify somebody. Same as a lot of people think that I'm going to argue, I'm going to demand the supervisor, and the officers will call a supervisor for it. That doesn't change the circumstances. The officer stopped you for its reason, and the officer isn't the judge. So people will start arguing their case and getting into a back and forth to the officer. The officer's not the judge. That's the reason we have courts. The cop stopped you for what he believes you committed a violation. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. That's what the not guilty or guilty part of the traffic stop is, right? If you get a ticket, you're going to plead not guilty if you think you didn't do it. If you say, you know what, I stopped, you're going to pay the ticket and call it a day.
I think you hit on a very core problem within our society, and that's that the media, the social media nonsense, this perception, again, this false narrative that police are out there just trying to harass people and be biased against minorities. There's no facts to prove that, but that mindset is set. So you're already setting the table for issues to occur when these two groups meet before a single word is even put out there. And that's dangerous.
It certainly is dangerous. And what happens is now you get into it. Same as I'll give you another example. You've probably seen videos. I think many of your listeners have too. Can an officer tell you? Say I'm a cop. I pull you over, Joe, for running a stop sign. Do I have the authority to order you to get out of the car for a stop sign violation?
I have no idea, but I will if you tell me to.
Right. But you see people all the time telling the officers, "No, I'm not going to get out of the car." Well, they actually do have the authority by a Supreme Court decision solely it's their decision to make, and it's for officer safety. They can order you to stay in the car, or they can order you to get out of the car, including the occupants. So a lot of people aren't aware of that, and a lot of people think, well, you just pulled me over. Just give me my ticket, and I'm out of here. Sir, please get out of the vehicle. I want you to stand over here. I'm not getting out of the vehicle. And it gets into this back and forth. So, and, the officers also, they're the professionals there. They're not the one getting stopped and who could be hot under the collar. But they tend to, it creates conflict and tension, which the officers tell them to get out of the car. They're refusing. That's what causes a lot of these problems. There's a lack of education about what the laws are. Another example is can an officer touch you? Do they have the right to touch you? If they order you to stop and you don't stop, they have reasonable suspicion, for example, that you did something, even if you didn't do it. It's an investigative detention. They have the right to stop you. And if you don't stop, they do have the right to physically stop you, make you stop. They have the right to handcuff you and detain you. A lot of people think that they don't have the right to do that, and it causes a huge amount of unnecessary conflict. And I do wish that, I said the education system, right? When I said the education system, not to say the schools aren't teaching, this stuff. I don't know what their curriculum is, but the police department has the ability to educate people just as much as the school system does, don't they?
Yeah.
They can put out public service announcements. The city government can. Unfortunately, what you're seeing now at the national level and even at the state level is a lot of anti-police or police accountability stuff and no goals towards educating the public on what the officers are allowed to do or not allowed to do. What can an officer do? I use the example of that shooting in Columbus where the officer shot the female, the 16-year-old, with the knife. A lot of people would just watch a quick video and not bother to watch it again and again. To analyze the situation properly, you've really got to watch that video a bunch of times. It's like reading a book. If you read a book once, you can some people are super good. They can soak in every detail. But most people just skim as they read. They're not getting every word. They're not getting the full stuff. So if you read the same book again, you might notice something, or watch the same movie again, you may notice something that you didn't pick up on the first time. Same as with these officer-involved shooting videos. You know, and don't get me wrong. I mean, there are incidents that are bad incidents. Flat out. There are cops that make mistakes, or they are on a power trip, or they lose their professional composure and start going crazy, acting out. And by and large, the officers that do that are dealt with pretty swiftly. I don't know if you remember down in, I want to say it's in Columbia, South Carolina, or in that area, there was a teenage girl in school, and the teacher told her to leave the room. This is a few years ago now. And then the principal told her to leave the room, and she wasn't listening to anybody. She was on her phone. The cop came in and told her to leave the room, went to grab her. The girl said, "Don't touch me." The cop flung her across the room with the desk, attached to the desk. Do you remember that?
No, I did not see it.
It was national news, maybe 4 or 5, but the cop was gone really fast.
As he should be.
The department, I mean, he let the emotional end of things get in the way, and here's this teenager giving him lip or whatever, and he got out of control. And we don't need that kind of conduct. People,
So Pat,
have a right to be dealt with.
So Pat, how does an officer like this one in Minneapolis have 19 infractions and still be on the job? How is that allowed to happen?
Well, that doesn't mean anything, though. You can't just look at numbers, right?
Yep.
You got to look at what happens, what's the outcome. Because there's a lot of times where people will file a complaint. I don't know if it happens so much anymore, but like when I first started, a lot of people were under the belief that if you get a ticket and you want to get out of the ticket, you want to beat the ticket, right? Before you go to court, you'll file a complaint against the officer. He was rude, he was this, and they think that somehow that's going to help with the ticket. Well, they're two separate processes. One has nothing to do with the other. And I mean, even with these incidents, like the most common misconduct complaint that they get, for the Internal Affairs gets for police, is rude conduct. So that's,
But isn't there a difference?
What I perceive as rude may be totally different. I use a New Yorker and someone from the farms of Minnesota as an example, right? New Yorkers are used to being, honking at people, yelling, being impatient, being kind of curt and rude, and where someone from out in the sticks somewhere they think that's totally outlandish that they behave like that, right? So the same thing can happen with communications between an officer and a citizen. They may think that the officer is entirely rude and file a complaint, and when you watch the video, the officer was just curt, or he was on the way to do something else, and he didn't spend an hour talking to the person, and so you can't just go by you have to see what the complaint is really all about.
Well, I guess my question is, would be, is an infraction something that they found him to be? I see, the way I look at it is, anyone can make a complaint, but it's not going on your record unless there's validity to it, and that's why you have the infraction on your record.
Well, so they'll keep track of it. So they keep track of all your complaints because they're supposed to be looking for a pattern as well. So if they didn't keep track of it, suppose you were that racist cop and you did pull somebody over, you racially profiled somebody, and they file a complaint, and Internal Affairs investigates it, and you say, I pulled him over because he ran a stop sign. Here's the video, and I couldn't even tell what race he was because it was nighttime and I was way down the street, but I did see him blow through the intersection. Well, that charge, the allegation that the officer was racially profiling the person, is probably not going to be substantiated, right? Because all the facts have to be in, and they have to find that you violated a policy. But if they just threw that away because it wasn't substantiated in that case, when they wouldn't be able to look at it as part of a pattern of conduct, over time, which a lot of times this is how things happen. Same as the excessive force. Officers who are using excessive force, frequently resorting to force when they shouldn't, you don't usually pick up on that from one incident. You may not pick up on it from two incidents unless it's an outrageous incident. But when you have a pattern, well, this officer is using force, 10 times a year, and most officers use force once a year. Now you can kind of assess that in context with his whole record as far as complaints go. So they don't delete it just because nothing came out of the complaint. 19 complaints. Was that what it was? 19 and how many years? I thought he had 19 years.
Yeah. So again, you're a captain of Meriden. How do we fix this divide they're trying to put in between us?
Personally, I think one of the biggest things that there's got to be dialogue. There's got to be communication. The rioting and the protests, I understand people want to be heard, but we've been hearing about this for years now. If you think back in history, last year is what people keep talking about, like the summer of 2020. But this really started with the Black Lives Matter movement and a lot of the anti-cop stuff back in 2014 down in Ferguson. And even before that, there were isolated, it wasn't as widespread, but this was a big problem in the 80s. It was a big problem in the 60s, in the 70s. So how do you fix it? The first thing you need to be is open with the community. And I think that's what you have now in Meriden with the chief, who has night hours. You walk right in there and have to meet with the chief. I think he meets with open door policy with the public. One of the problems that, from my perspective anyway, is administration who just sticks with the people that like them. So when you have a police management team that just meets with the neighborhood initiative, the neighborhood wash groups, and everyone loves them, and they have coffee and donuts together, you don't go out and talk to the people who don't like you. You already know that the people who like you are on your side. So now you need to open dialogue with the people who don't like you, right?
Well, I'm no fan of our previous police chief, and I've stated my grievances against him and the way he ran things for years. And it's a breath of fresh air with the new police chief. I don't believe the NI units are being utilized the way they should. First of all, I still think that the brass should be out there and not police officers. I think police officers belong in the streets talking with, again, like you just said, in the neighborhoods where they're not trusted. Again, under false pretenses, they're not trusted. Under false narratives, they're not trusted. But again, the only way to fix that is to get in there. But again, how do you fix a divide that's really been ingrained? Just like when Jamie was talking, with his friend that was afraid, that said, I can't talk, I can't speak up at an airport. How do you get through to people like that have that thought implanted in their head, whether it's true or not? How do you start a dialogue? Because they're never going to believe you.
I only saw I only looked at Facebook at the later portion of your show, so I missed I didn't see a lot of it. So I might have missed that part. It doesn't ring a bell. I'll give you an example. I went on a call one time. This is probably 2015, and it was a 911 call in the middle of the night. I was working overtime, and the woman was reporting these people were coming trying to break into her house, right? So 3 units went there, because if you have multiple people, obviously you're going to want to have at least a few units there in case you do need to take somebody into custody. Come to find out, it was her ex-boyfriend and 2 of his friends who had just shown up to collect his personal belongings. They had broken up. So we calmed everybody down. We talked to the girlfriend. She was willing to let officers come in with the ex-boyfriend and one of his friends to move his stuff. And the other friend had to stay outside, and I stayed outside with him. And as soon as the other officers and the friend, the boyfriend and his buddy went into their house to go get the stuff, the kid that I was out there with, he was just standing there. He put his hands up in the air. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I know how you cops are. I said, okay, we're just standing here. I mean, you can relax. There's nothing going on. I know how you are. I know how you cops are. I said, do you really? I mean, really, what do you think is going to happen? He goes, you beat people. And I said, okay, how old are you? 23. He's 23 years old. How many times have you been beaten by the police? Never. How many times have you been shot by the police? Never. Okay, what makes you think that that's going to happen. And we were talking about this the whole time. I said, there's a lot of anecdotal stories. People will tell a story, and then someone else will tell that story, and some of these things get wildly blown out of proportion. Yeah, there are bad cops out there. Just like in any profession, you've got lazy people in professions. You've got people who do kind of shoddy work, right? Mm-hmm. And there's lazy government employees and overzealous or aggressive people that are in these jobs too. But by just labeling everybody as the same, everyone's the same. They're all going to treat me badly because I heard this story about it. And the only way to break through that stuff is to have this communication, have the dialogue, you know. I think that the things that the current administration is doing are great. I mean, the things that the past administration was doing, a lot of that is learned, institutional knowledge. That's how it was always done. So that's how I'm going to do it. You know, there was not a lot of civic organization attendance and the brass working nights to go out into the community and go on scene and things of that nature. They did adopt the chaplain program. I would encourage the chief to look into doing volunteer stuff, getting citizens involved in volunteering, start a criminal justice club in each of the high schools so the officers can come into the schools and the different units can meet with the kids. That's what you need to try and overcome the obstacles. You know, you need to be around the cops and get to know them, and then realize that these cops aren't that bad. You know, a lot of what, like I said, people watch these videos and then they make an assessment of their own police force from a video that happened in Texas or Los Angeles. Well, let's try to get communication and get some familiarity with our local cops, and a lot of that stuff will go by the wayside.
Well,
I mean, you saw there was a Black Lives Matter protest last summer in Meriden, and it was great. There were no problems. The chief of police went and spoke. It was a great time. I went. I thought it was great. There's a lot of positive stuff in the community. If we keep focusing on the negative, that's all we're going to see, unfortunately.
Well, I think that's absolutely 100% correct. Is that the negative is the only thing being thrown out there. My concern right now is the safety of police.
I bet you he'll do it. I bet you he'll do it.
I tell you what, we're 2 hours into this program tonight. I don't think we're anywhere near done. I still have like 1,000 slides on my dashboard here. I think we're gonna pick it up on Sunday where we're leaving it off. And I'm going to try to get the police chief on. Maybe he can give us some insight also. And
I know he will, because he's a very forward-thinking guy. He's and I've met him a few times. I can't say that I know him very well. I've just met him a few times. But he comes from town. He was really influenced. I don't know if you saw how much he was influenced by Hector Cardona Sr.,
yep,
who was one of the community officers when he was a little kid.
Hector's a great guy.
That's what we need. We need more of that kind of stuff and more people who think that way, And they're not all about making arrests and getting, that's a part of the job too. But there's a bigger piece of the puzzle. If all you're doing is worrying about locking everybody up, well, pretty soon you're going to alienate the rest of the population too, because you're mistreating people in your quest for to make arrests, and you're just going to be trampling all over people's rights, and that is no way to be either.
Well, I mean, the police chief definitely is very accessible. I mean, this police chief, we've already done one event together down on the green, along with Elaine Cariotti and Will Calloway and a lot of different people. So, I mean, he is very accessible, and I think he's great for the city. And hopefully we're going to have him on. And we could pick up.
A lot of communities do. And I don't know what Meriden's doing about, but you hear a lot of talk about the police oversight boards and this and that. You don't necessarily need a police oversight board unless you need a police oversight board, like you've got a corrupt administration and a lot of officers just misuse abusing the population. But you could certainly create a police advisory board. I mean, the chief can create a citizens advisory board. I'm going to take people from all walks, students from high school. I'm going to take senior centers, people from the senior center, people from different parts of town, and I don't mean like the same folks. You don't want your police advisory board to just be your neighborhood initiative, your community watch group people. You want to get people from get your biggest critics on board. Get them to at least agree to have dialogue, and now you'll see that things start to change.
But I think the problem we're having with that, Pat, and I agree. Listen, I want civilians to be a certain part of the solution, but if you look at what council wants to do and Sonia Jelks wants to do, I mean, she wants to do a community board to tell officers how they're going to do their job and to handcuff them more than help. I mean, she has an agenda, and I think that's going to be very, very dangerous.
That can be dangerous, especially when people on it. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I mean, after the incident out with I forgot the name of the town. It's right near Minneapolis. But the mayor got on TV and said the cops don't need their guns for all these traffic stops. Okay, but tell me which one we do need it for, and we'll just leave all this junk in the locker until the day we need it. And that stuff is heavy. That stuff weighs probably 20 pounds, 22 pounds with all the stuff you got to carry around. If you know when you're going to need a gun, you wouldn't need a gun. You wouldn't bring it around every day until you needed it, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, that's not how things work. So what we do need to do is, when you get citizens involved in the police, then they start to understand what the officers face. I don't know. A few years ago, there was a guy who was really anti-cop down in Phoenix, Arizona. And then they brought him in.
I saw that.
They got him to do the shoot, don't shoot training. Well, he shot every single person.
Yes.
And now he's like, holy crap, I didn't realize how quick you got to decide what to do and how you have to assess things so fast. And
they did a whole news article on him. Yeah, I saw it. I saw the video. They did a news article on him.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of training like that. They show people how to take. People always think the taser. It's not foolproof. There's a lot of times when an officer will tase somebody and wires get tangled up, or they don't get the probes don't go in, and now the taser's useless. Same as pepper spray. People can overcome pepper spray. Those are tools, but you can't be overly reliant on one because that could potentially be a problem too.
Right.
A lot of people think that just use your taser. You don't need the gun. Like I had a guy tell me one time, officers don't need to shoot people. They can use a taser. Okay, well, what if I go to taser someone who's a deranged lunatic and it doesn't work and he knocks me out with one punch, and now he can take my gun? What are you going to do now? He's like, oh, I don't know. I never saw. We don't know what the outcome of these situations is going to be. It's not a video game. This is real life.
Right.
So you got to be careful. And there are too many officers being killed, but there are way more officers being injured in these situations. And a lot of people don't think of that side of it. If you have an officer tussling with somebody with a 20-something pound gun belt on, and he blows his back out, and there's an ACL, he's out of work for 6-8 months. You're paying for that, Joe.
Yeah, I know. But you know what, though? The problem we're having today, Pat, is that they don't care anymore. They don't care about officers anymore. They don't care about their well-beings, and I think that's one of the main issues. But like I said, we could go on this, Pat, for another 3 hours, and hopefully you'll join us again Sunday, and we can continue this conversation, and hopefully we'll get the police chief on. But
I tell you what, I guarantee if he doesn't have anything else going on, he's very open-minded, and he's more than willing to talk, and he's the ambassador for the police department. So I'm sure he'll answer a lot of your questions, and maybe you can even get him to do some of the things that you think are good ideas, and at least convince him to listen to your ideas.
Well, I hope so, and hopefully the audience will put some stuff in also, some questions and maybe get some things answered. Pat, it is always good to talk to you, Captain. I haven't seen you in a while, but it's always nice to catch up. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Thank you very much, Joe. Have a great night. Nice, good show. I'll tune in on Sunday.
Thanks, Pat. I'll talk to you. Bye. So that's Mr. Gaynor, an absolutely amazing police officer. Amazing police officer. We need 1 million more just like him. He has dedicated his life to the city of Meriden and to service to the community. And when he retired, he was a captain of the great city of Meriden. So, guys, like I said, I still have a bunch of slides. It's getting late. We've been here 2 hours. We could sit here and do another 3 hours on this conversation. It's an important conversation to have. Whether we agree or disagree, it's important that we have these conversations. And not only do we have the conversation to talk about the negatives, we're going to talk about the positives on Sunday and what we can do. So, again, until next time, guys, I love every one of you. I can't thank you enough for being here. We're going to continue this again. But until then, God bless you. And God bless this absolutely amazing country we have in America that needs to be protected and needs to be promoted as the greatest country in the world, because it is. I love you guys. I will see you guys on Sunday. Take care.